Okay, welcome everybody to The Right Side Up with Danielle Strickland.
And also with me, James Scholl. And today we are very, very, very excited about our guest, none other than Sheila Wray Gregoire.
Yes,
Gregoire?
we are.
I don't, oh man, that's embarrassing.
Say it right.
You got
I
to
know,
get some
well-
of the French Canadian going, you know?
Yeah.
Gregoire. Yeah.
As an Englishman,
Gregoire.
I refuse.
Gregoire.
No, I will
That's
not.
right. He is an Englishman,
There was
so that
something
makes
called
sense.
the Battle
Gregoire.
of Waterloo.
We are very excited to have you, Sheila. I'm personally been really blessed, really, I would say, to learn much from your research approach to all the things in your own background, your own experience. You are also a strong, empowered Canadian woman helping the world, which I
Always
Right
grateful
back
for.
at
I
you.
think I think that's part of our calling.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for being here. And I know that your latest, so our podcast, we've been talking about good news and powers and principalities. And we were going to separate those things and then figure it out. Actually, they go together because the best way to fight powers and principalities is with good news,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and just to keep that good news going. So part of what I love, I think, about what you witness to all the time is you have this beautiful way of doing that thing. Like, here's exposing the principalities and powers, like the way that the darkness confuses and lies and steals and kills. And then also, here's the good news. Here's the good news. It doesn't have to be that way. And here are some actual tools and strategies and ways that we can do things better. So I love that. I think it's really important that both of those things actually stay together. And I love the way that you do that. And I guess I'd really love to chat through your specialty. So you started with sort of the Great Sex Rescue, right? Was the big book that sort of kicked off this stuff. Would you catch our listeners up on that journey itself and like how you came to be this great advocate for women and change and challenging cultural norms of patriarchy? And yeah.
Yeah, Great Sex Rescue was a big change because I was really probably in the center of the evangelical world for a long time. I had a really big book, The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex, that came out in 2012. It won the Canadian Christian Book of the Year in that year. My blog was I had the largest Christian marriage blog online for like over a decade. But I don't know, I guess I kind of figured we were all saying the same thing, right? Like, I love Jesus. Evangelicals love Jesus, so we're all saying the same thing. And I didn't read what other people wrote because I was so afraid of plagiarizing. So I just assumed that, yeah, we're all saying this. I'm just saying it in a different way. And then one day, it was in January of 2019, I had a migraine. I didn't want to work. I was on Twitter, as it was called then. And people were fighting over whether they needed love or respect. And they were referring to Emerson Eggerich's best-selling marriage book, Love and Respect. And I thought, well, I'm a woman and I need respect. And then I thought, I have that book upstairs and I've never read it. This is an amazing way to procrastinate so that I can feel productive without having to be productive. So I went and got the book and I turned to the sex chapter, being the sex person that I am. And I read things like, if your husband is typical, he has a need that you don't have. And the need was for physical release, and how women don't need physical release, and how if he doesn't get physical release, he'll come under satanic attack. And there wasn't a single word in that chapter about a woman feeling pleasure, about sex being about intimacy. And I just freaked right out. And I called my daughter, who was working for me at the time, and Joanna Sawatsky, who is an epidemiologist, master's in epidemiology, statistician, who was also working for me at the time. And I'm like, we got to do something. And that something became the largest research study that's ever been done of evangelical women's marital and sexual satisfaction and the Great Sex Rescue. So we took a look and we said, hey, if you believe the stuff you're being taught, what happens to you? And the picture wasn't pretty.
Tell me a little bit, like give us some, go buy the Great Sex Rescue also, listeners, and or
Yes.
listen to it or whatever you need to do. But just give me the highlights. Like, obviously it's outrageous. First of all, it's just an outrageous, almost medieval approach to women being simply incubators and men, being the actual people that need all the things and their needs met and all these kind of things. So it's just like, it's almost hard to believe that not only do people believe this, but also practice it and teach it and then tell people to do this. And as a result of that, your research also showed that evangelical women are not very satisfied in marriages. That's part of the research, I think, that was shocking to people, was like, we're supposed to be the great champions of marriage. And yet here we are living these kind of sad realities.
Well, what we were looking at in the Great Sex Rescue is in our survey, 20,000 women, we listed a whole bunch of different beliefs, some that we thought were healthy,
Mhm.
some that we thought were unhealthy, and we threw everything at the wall. And we were like, okay, how does this affect women's marital and sexual satisfaction? So we said, do you believe this? Have you ever believed it? Have you ever been taught it? And we also said, hey, let's talk about your marriage and let's talk about your sex life. And we
Yeah.
identified 4 big teachings that really hurt women's sex lives. And basically what the evangelical church has largely done is we've portrayed sex as a male entitlement and a female obligation. So
Mhm.
sex is something for him that she has to provide. And women are objectified, sex is objectified. It's not about an experience they share together. It's a male entitlement. And when you believe that obligation sex message, women's orgasm rates drop, marital and sexual satisfaction drops. But what was most interesting to us is that your chance of having sexual pain disorders increases to just about the same statistical effect as if you'd been abused.
Hmm.
Wow.
So women's bodies literally interpret obligation as trauma.
Wow.
And evangelical women suffer from sexual pain disorders at about 2.5 times the rate of the general population.
Whoa.
So this is largely our problem. And it's
Mhm.
because of how we've taught about sex.
So this is basically your body. Well, and so this is interesting. So, okay, keep talking. Keep telling me the other things because I have so many questions, but also I can see how this research project around the sex life of evangelical women led now to the framework of how we even think about marriage and,
Yeah.
what God says about all these things. I can see how that would naturally go there. But
Yeah, and I do wanna put a caveat in that it's not okay, this gets really super complicated, and this is why not all research studies have shown this, because religiosity, so just believing in God, going to church, having a strong faith, is so good for you. Like, it is so very, very good for you. It is so good for you that psychologists aren't even studying it anymore because it's just known in the literature that religiosity is a positive force, okay?
Mhm.
So religiosity is really, really, really super good, but not all religiosity is the same.
Right.
And the problem is that when you internalize certain beliefs, your marriage actually can get worse than if you had never gone to church at all.
Right.
So it's like most people who go to church and believe do have better marriages than the general population. That actually is true.
Right.
Unless you internalize this toxic stuff that is throughout all of our books, like really throughout everything. And so it's like if beliefs are toxic, if you believe them and
Mhm.
they're only helpful if you don't, then how helpful is that belief? And
Right.
this has been the evangelical approach to marriage has kind of meant that all the benefits that we were supposed to be getting from religiosity
Hmm.
have.
Mm. Wow. Gross. And that's actually really a good distinction because that does help distinguish between them. Like it's almost it says to that, sort of evangelical toxic belief system within, Christianity, you don't define Christianity.
Mhm.
You're the outlier.
Yeah.
You're the one that doesn't fit with this
Hmm.
regular thing. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was another interesting
Interesting.
study. There's another interesting study by Homan is her last name and et al. I forget who et al is, but from 2021, where they were looking at the health effects for women of going to churches. And what they found is that yes, women's health is better if you attend a church, and so is men's, unless you attend a church where women are not allowed in leadership. And then the
Hmm.
health benefits for women disappear and they're actually worse, whereas men still get the health benefits.
Right.
So
Wow.
it's like, yes, religiosity is good until you get into the toxic parts. Yeah.
Wow. So this would be important for people to pay attention to because I know a lot of women, strong, empowered women that go to churches that don't empower women.
Mhm.
Mm.
I often, we have these discussions because I used to be like, well, do whatever suits you.
Mhm.
And now I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you supporting places that are actually damaging people and girls and women? Like, because I actually think
And
the
you.
toxicity, yes. But I mean, even if they're like, no, I get something out of this or like whatever, I'm like, okay, I respect your, your discernment and your choices. But then I'm like, I don't anymore. Like, I actually think this is so toxic to other, to other women and girls
Mhm.
and men that I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't think we can support these places anymore. But that there are a lot of those places, it would seem to me. I keep running into people who go to them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
you know,
the other interesting point is that most people who say they believe in male leadership, especially male leadership in marriage, don't
yeah,
actually act it out.
right.
And so you have all of these people who are going to complementarian churches saying they believe in complementarianism, but they don't act it out. And so their marriages are fine.
Right. Cause it doesn't
Mm.
make, it actually doesn't make any sense in real life.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Like
as
I
soon as you
canceled a
do,
marriage seminar in my early, in my early ministry, my first ministry. These people came up to do a marriage seminar for our church, and I remember vetting their stuff because I was already like fully like I don't want a marriage that because I actually I didn't almost didn't get married because the marriage I saw on display was something I didn't want. I didn't want to be oppressed and good and like excited about it.
yes.
Anyway, so um, oh, could I please? Anyway, so I vetted their stuff and their stuff seemed pretty good. And we had like, I don't know, 30, 15 couples, this small little church. And we had these people come and they started teaching like, men, do labor and women do accounting. And like, I mean, it was just the weird. And I was just like, this literally, all of the things that you're saying literally are not true in this room, just with these 15 couples. Forget about in life. So I said and they said something about like the man is the head of the house or something like that, which is just like outrageous. And yeah, exactly. I mean, it's such a
Mhm,
maligned,
mhm,
out of context verse that's used to oppress women, not scripturally accurate. And anyway, my husband and I are on the same page with this. And I say to him, we got to, he writes to me, we got to pull the plug on this thing, like right now.
mhm,
And I wrote back to him, well, you're the head, buddy. But anyway, we took a break. And then during the break, I just said to these guys, yeah, we're done. Like you're done. And I remember it was one of the most awkward things. And then they said to me, this is what the devil would want you to do.
mhm.
And I said,
Yeah,
oh no, I assure you, the devil would want me to have you guys teach this nonsense to about 15 different couples. Uh,
yeah.
it was like the hardest. And they drove from like 3 hours away. They had to like go back that night. I was like, bye bye, like, please leave my church. And then I just said, there's ice cream at my house. And we all went and had some ice cream. And I think it was the best marriage seminar I've ever done. But it's so prevalent. I mean, these guys just were like, this is what this is. And
Mhm.
I had actually vetted their material. So their material did not say it. But then when they came, they said it. And
Right.
I was just like, it's outrageous. Anyway.
And one of the things that we've done 4 big surveys now, 4 big studies and for 4 different books, 4 or 5 different books, is these things are just everywhere in evangelical bestsellers.
Mm.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
we're, and I think people know that it's toxic, but they'll say, "Well, just chew the meat and spit out the bones." And obviously, you're not going to agree with everything in the book. And it's like, but okay. Well, we developed a rubric of healthy sexuality. So 12 different questions that you could
Mhm.
score between 0 and 4 on each of those questions. And we had 13 of the evangelical best-selling marriage and sex books. And then we had John Gottman's 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. Gottman scored 47 out of 48.
Mm.
Love and Respect literally scored 0.
I love it.
Every Man's Battle scored 9, although Rebecca, my daughter, says she would have given it a 5. She disagrees with me on one. But, like, I mean, evangelical books scored so low. And it simply isn't true that you can't write a book that will not harm someone. Like, that's what I hear all books are gonna harm. Even scripture can be used to harm. Scripture is used to harm when people weaponize it and take it out of context.
Yeah.
These
Right.
books harm when people take them at their word.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the difference.
I think the
Well, so interesting. Gottman's the material I've used, for my ministry when I do pre-marriage counseling or whatever. It's so that's the other good news is there is good material that you can use. And then Sheila, you're now, offering some of these things. So we'll get into the marriage you want because James just got married. And so we need to help him.
We need to help him
get
get on the
married just
straight and
3
narrow.
months ago. James did
Yeah.
pick up his copy of The Marriage You Want, and I've read it in a week. So, yeah, so that tells you something. I do, just because you bring this up and it intersects well, the love and respect thing, I remember 10 years ago or something, they were doing their thing. I think the author's at a big church in Toronto. Most of the people that I'm friends with aren't in the Christian world. And so the tagline of men just need respect and women just need love. I posted this, of course, and all my non-Christian friends found it hilarious. And most of my Christian friends also found it hilarious. But some of them went, well, don't knock it till you've tried it. I'm like, I don't need to eat razor wire to know that I don't want to try it, man. I think the thing that really blows my mind, and because intuitively, I think that is a stupid idea. What I love what you do, Sheila, is like y'all just do research and you scrutinize other research or the lack of research. I just want to like read this very quickly because I think it's fascinating and really just deflates so much nonsense and really exposes exposes the powers and lies and oppression and patriarchy and all these things. The idea was popularized by Emerson Eggert's best-selling book Love and Respect, and he descended his thesis using a survey question from Shanti Fenman that was published in her book Women Only, in which she asked 400 men, would you rather feel A, alone and unloved, or B, inadequate and disrespected? And 74% of the men chose alone and unloved. And then you say, essentially, it's like, these are already false couplings. Like, that's a ridiculous idea. It's like, well, would you rather feel hungry and alive or dead and full of food? I'm like, well, I guess hungry? I don't know. Well, 100% of people would rather be hungry than fed. Like, what a ridiculous, it's like a terrible. And then they didn't actually ask women. They just went, women are the opposite. So women want the, I'm so like, so this is like, I cannot believe how much is predicated on this nonsense methodology. And I want to be clear, there is so much damage and so much hurt and so many things to be very, very, very upset about here. But the part that blows my mind more than anything is just like, how did they get away with such nonsense?
This is the question that keeps me up at night, James, is like, how did nobody ask this? How did that pass the smell test? Okay, because in her book for Women Only, she even says that her survey designer said it was a bad question. That the people that she hired to do this survey for her said that people were having trouble with this question because it wasn't clear. Yeah. But she said that that's okay because that just proves that men see respect and love as the same thing. Like, it's just, it's unbelievable. But yeah, she said, would you rather be alone and unloved or inadequate and disrespected? And the problem is those aren't synonyms, right? Alone and unloved, those aren't synonyms. Inadequate and disrespected are not synonyms.
Insane.
And then, they didn't ask women. When other researchers asked women answered the same way men did.
Sorry, and you say that as well, that actually women answered basically within 3% of what the men did, because again, the ridiculous false coupling anyway, and then also amazing to me.
So then what we did, which was sort of fun, Joanna Sawatsky, our survey person, she had so much fun with this. So she just gave people 4 words: alone, unloved, inadequate, disrespected. And she said, which one would you hate the most? And which one is the most like tolerable? And both men and women didn't want to be unloved. Like, that was the worst for both men and women. And both men and women said being alone isn't that bad. Okay. But it's women who then rate disrespect as the next worst. Men rate inadequate as the next worst. So it's like,
interesting.
Women actually have more of a problem with being disrespected than men do.
It's like, had they not even heard of Aretha Franklin?
I know. Well, actually, Emerson Eggers mentions
spell it, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Like, it's a woman's anthem for a friggin' generation. You didn't even listen to the song.
Except that in Love and Respect, Emerson Eggers refers to that song and says, but it was a man who wrote it because a woman could never have written it because she wouldn't understand.
Obviously. Yep.
Gosh, what is wrong with that woman?
It became an anthem for women. Like, women resonated with it. But yeah, he says it doesn't matter because a man wrote the song.
Yeah. Or at least a man said he wrote the song. Anyway.
Yeah.
We won't get into that.
The point is, this is the quality of research, of so-called research that has been in evangelicalism up till now.
Right.
Used
and that's
to
actually,
justify.
that exposing that itself is so helpful. Like, just to say, like, this is the level. Like, congratulations, guys, you don't make sense because this whole thing is a sort of a facade of research. It's not even accurate or true. But how do we get away with it? And then also, how do people buy it? How do we just keep buying it? Like, why are we? I know. these conversations could make me mad because I just literally, but I remember even, so I grew up at egalitarian church, you know, so like women could lead, women leaders, women led the whole movement, global movement, and all the things. And if you were called into this, even if you were called together as a couple, you were called into it together. But even in that concept, I remember very clearly, and this was part of my allergy to marriage, is my parents would equally do the work. You know, my mom would use her gifts. She'd be work. Then they'd go to the church. They'd work all day. They'd come home, and then my mom would cook dinner. My dad would read the newspaper. You know what I mean? Like while my mom cooked dinner, and then they kind of bought into this headship thing. And then there came a part where the organization they served with promoted my dad and then just didn't give my mom a job. She had to phone and say, is there anything I could do? So they literally, like, it only counted towards my dad's promotion, but my mom and dad served equally up until the promotion. So I was outraged as a kid. Like, I was just a teenager and I was
Right.
so furious. I mean, I just was so furious about the system. I was furious that my dad just accepted the promotion without any like pushback to say, wait a minute, like I did this together with somebody, you know, like I was furious at like my mom's like diminishedness in the thing. I was just like, so I made like a top 10 thing. If I was going to get married, here's what would have to be, you know, clear. And, you know, and it was just like, I called myself the feminazi in those days because I just was so clearly aware of the toxic reality of even within places that seem to be okay, the way that we in relationship buy into the hierarchical ideas and the male centeredness of life and how diminishing it is to women and how easy it happens, you know, and then also how spiritualized it gets, where like, oh, my mom's just being humble and like submissive and like more like Jesus. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Jesus would really want my mom to like be less than who he called her to be and not use her gifts and not, you know, like that just sounds just like Jesus. Yeah. So it's just, I feel like that. And one of the things that was on my list was I won't change my name. And I remember that being, oh my goodness, if you want to push evangelical buttons, you know, just do that. Just don't do anything. And that's that. I think part of that for me, as I've grown older and maybe a little bit wiser in the space, that for me was like a point of non-compliance. And I honestly think, like, I think non-compliance might be the weapon that we haven't used enough.
Yes.
It's just,
Yes.
I'm just not doing it. I'm not going along with it. I'm not playing the game. I'm not going to be part. And it really, I think in the end, protected me from what could be, you know? Yeah. Anyway, how do people get this
have you ever read
marriage they want?
the
Yeah.
wonderful Canadian woman, Lucy Maud Montgomery's short story, The Strike at Putney?
No, I haven't.
Okay, she
I
wrote
mean,
it, and I
obviously I'm
think,
familiar with Anne
yes,
of Green Gables.
everyone
Yeah.
loves Anne.
Yeah.
Although,
Yeah.
to be honest, Emily of New Moon is better. But anyway, okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
But she wrote this short story. If everyone listening, just go Google The Strike at Putney, Putney, and you can read it for
Okay.
free online.
The Strike of Putney. Got
Yeah,
it.
wrote it in 1902. And it's about this wonderful little Presbyterian church that is run so well and operates amazingly well. And one day this female missionary wants to come and speak. And so the women's group, the women's auxiliary, invites all the women from neighboring churches to come hear her because the pastor's going to be away that Sunday night so they can use the sanctuary. And then the men get a bee in their bonnet that women can't preach from the pulpit, can't speak
Right.
from the pulpit, because that would be usurping authority. And so the women decide, well, if we can't speak from the pulpit, then gosh, we're really not good enough to put flowers in the church or to play the organ
Right.
or to run the
Right.
fundraiser or anything. And so they just stop.
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it's
And I
over.
just think
And
she
it's
wrote
over.
this over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're still having
Well, that's
the
what
same
Alan Hirsch is
conversations.
always like. Why don't you just strike? Why doesn't every woman just leave? Like, don't do anything in the church, and it would just shut down.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I'm just like, yeah. Why do we comply with this
Yeah.
nonsense?
I still
But
think
we don't
get,
just comply. We also believe it. Like, this is the
Yeah.
real struggle: is that women actually believe it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do we help? How do we help?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sheila, well, you're the real expert on this stuff. What's step one? I guess that's the thing, because I meet people at step 7, which is like they've deconstructed or they've lost their
Right.
faith
Mhm.
or like that.
Right.
But like as far as like I'm in a complementarian marriage and I've been told my heart is deceitful above all things, so when I dare to dream that maybe my body and autonomy matters, I know that's Satan talking to me. Like, what's the earliest that we could like help or intervene? What if you sin?
I think it's that you're called to follow Jesus. And if we all keep Jesus front and center, then Jesus wants all of us to be transformed into his likeness, right?
Mhm.
And so if we are in a relationship where that is not happening either for us or our spouse, then something needs to change. And the problem is that women are being told you need to follow your husband. No, you don't. You need to follow Jesus. A marriage is supposed to be two people hand in hand following Jesus together,
Mhm.
which means that you matter because
Mhm.
you can hear from Jesus too. He says that very clearly in John 10, right? His sheep know his voice. And I think women have been told that you can't really trust your gut. You can't trust the Holy Spirit in your life. You need to let your husband do that. And it just doesn't work. And so I think number one is just women understanding that you actually do matter. You actually do matter. The Bible passage that I keep coming back to, and I'm actually writing a book based on these verses right now, is Isaiah 43-5, where you have the voice of God calling in the wilderness, and you see God's heart. This is God's big picture will for what earth should be like, is that the mountains are going to be brought low and the valleys are going to be brought high, so that there will be no crooked path, and so the paths will be
Mhm.
made straight.
Mhm.
And you think about that is what Jesus does, is he brings down those that are high and he brings up those that are low so that we can be on an equal playing field and we can go forward loving Christ
It just
together.
happens that Mary quoted that. Is that part of your
Yeah, was that?
it's part of Mary's
Yes, and
it just
Mary quotes
happens
it
that
too.
Mary's quoting
Yes,
Isaiah. Right, right,
exactly, exactly.
right.
And so that is God's heart, right? But what we do in the evangelical church is we get it backwards, because God
Mhm.
wants those who are brought low to be those who are low to be brought up, and those who are high to be brought low. But what do? We go to the people that are high and we preach to them, you should be higher.
Mhm.
Be strong in the Lord, act like men, make decisions, lead. And we tell those who are low, you need to be humble. You need to
Mhm.
submit. You need to
Right,
sacrifice.
right.
So we're actually doing the opposite
Yeah.
of what
Mhm.
God's will is for us. And we're missing the whole picture.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like even in the marriage passages where Paul instructs people, people miss the context because they miss that, women had no actual rights. Women weren't
Hmm.
considered, loving persons. Women weren't. So even the idea of like consider your wife's body as though it were yours was like, what? Like my wife is
Hmm.
property. So they miss the actual sheer crazy transformative idea of what Paul's saying to men in a
Hmm.
culture where they didn't behave like that or even think like that. So, and they
Yeah.
just miss it,
And the
and
only
apply it to our context today.
yeah, the
Yeah.
only place that authority in marriage is actually mentioned in scripture is in 1 Corinthians 7, where it's talking about sex, and there the authority is shared. Right?
Right.
Because the wife has
It's
authority over her
mutual.
husband's body, the husband has authority over the wife. So
Yes.
and don't deprive each other except by mutual consent. So
Mhm.
it's mutual decision making right there.
Yes. Which is transformative in that cult because that's the piece that we miss is it's the same with the sort of when people talk like throw the verses out, Jesus talks about divorce and miss
Yeah.
the context of like women not being able to divorce. Like this is not
Yeah.
actually, this isn't even words to women. This is words to men and who are using law to harm women. But anyway, tell James how to have the marriage he wants,
Yeah,
Yes.
Sheila.
Okay,
I know.
so for this one, we surveyed another 7,000 people, including 1,300 matched pairs, which was super fun because with a matched pair, you can see, okay, if the husband says he does this, how does this affect the wife? Or if the wife says she does this, how does it affect the husband? Or if the husband says he does 30% of the housework, does he actually? Like, what is the wife saying? And you can look at both. So we had
What's
a
your
lot of
definition of
fun with that.
housework? That's right.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But the big secret is just a simple one. Just be partners. Just show up.
Yeah.
Just be partners and be prepared to be challenged because marriage is about growth. We want to grow. We should be growing. And so that means that if you're going to be really intimate, you need to be a partner. You need to show up and then you need to be able to get vulnerable. And that's super hard because a lot of us were never taught how to be vulnerable or were never given any safety or permission to be vulnerable. But you can't build intimacy unless you're able to talk about what you're feeling and be open to hearing what your spouse is feeling. And that's hard for a lot of people.
Mm.
It does, as I've been going through it, and then, there's kind of occasionally there's a set of questions at the end of the chapter. I'll go to Emily, I'm like, "How am I doing on this, by the way?" Like, I think what's really nice, and, I am new to this and, obviously trying as hard as I can. I think what's really helpful even in a book in this is some of it I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually doing that. That's nice." Like, "Hey, it turns out the thing I was doing was the right thing to do." But even being able to go to her and say, "Hey, I feel I might not be pulling my weight here. Is that true? And if so, how can I do that?" And there have been times when she said, "It would be great if you're able to do more of this." And then there's also times when she said, "No, because you do this and this and this, and so you do these things that you don't notice, and I might be doing things that you," which I just love that too. That, like, yeah, it turns out
Mhm.
that communication is really at the core of everything, and
Yes.
Mhm.
it took us a very long while to get married, so we kind of did a lot of communicating to get that far, and then a whole bunch of therapy whilst we were working that out. So, like,
That's
by the time
great.
we got married after 5 years, we're like, okay.
Therapy early is so much better than therapy in your 50s and 60s.
It's a lot less tangled, that's for sure, right?
Yes,
Because the
yes.
untangling is harder.
Yeah.
What do you, Sheila, what is your best advice for people who really want a better marriage? And what do you say to people who are stuck in marriages that aren't good? Because this is one of the great things, like James, you said, like, you're in a complementarian framework, you have an awakening, this is
I'm not,
problematic.
sorry, just so we're clear.
No, but I'm
Yes,
saying, like,
yes.
you raised that, like, what's step
Yeah,
1? So
yeah, yeah.
step 1
Mhm.
is actually Jesus speaking to the woman, like, this is your discipleship relationship with God. So that's primary, which is important because you have to listen to God no matter how hard that might be. But Sheila, what's your best advice for people who are struggling through old concepts and very popular concepts, maybe even within their family structures?
Mhm. And so much of this depends on how this is being lived out in your marriage because, like I said, many
Mhm.
people believe it. In fact, I think it's 78.9% of people make decisions together, which means that,
Yes.
a little over 20% he decides. Okay, so
Mhm.
he makes decisions even if he consults with her first. When that happens, it's really, really bad. So the question is, are you in a marriage where he does make those decisions and
Mhm.
genuinely a toxic marriage, or are you in a marriage where everyone says he's supposed to, but he actually doesn't? You do make decisions together. So is this a belief thing or is this an action thing? Because if it's just a belief thing, then you can start living out your truth. Right? Jesus is the way,
Right.
the truth, and the life. So it's okay to start living out truth. And if truth is, hey, we're actually deciding together, then you can make that known. You can say, you know what? I know you say that you're the head and you have to make the decisions, but we've never done that.
Right.
And so
Right.
Interesting.
let's just be
Mhm.
clear about how we live our marriage. We're actually running after
Mhm.
Jesus together. And you can
Mhm.
just start speaking up. And you can say
Mhm.
when you're not happy with something. But if you're in a marriage where this is actually being acted out upon you and it's toxic, then it's a very different thing.
Yes.
And I think in those cases, the best thing you can do is to get a safety support group around you
Mhm.
to help you see through the fog and to make
Yeah.
decisions well. And that safety group around you may not be from your church because often church can make it worse depending on what kind of church you're in. So find people who truly love you, who are going to help you and who see through any issues with abuse because a lot of women who are in those situations really are, going through coercive control
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something.
And that I think that those beliefs are toxic in and of themselves,
Yes.
but then the actual inaction of those beliefs are abuse.
Mhm.
And so that's, I think, this is the thing that really, I think, drives me a little crazy in, like, a good way. Like, just like I'm angry about it because I think it's toxic to believe these things about the Bible. It creates a toxic God. It creates a toxic framework for relationships that Jesus literally said, don't do that. So it bugs me that it's so toxic. But then what really bugs me is when people actually believe this stuff and do it, because then it literally goes from a toxic belief to an abusive practice. And if you're in an abusive, relationship, then yeah, support group 100%, but then also permission to find a safe place. Like if it's
Mhm.
unsafe
Yep.
for you to be in that relationship, you can leave. And I think that's one of the most toxic outcomes or abusive outcomes of this belief system all the way through is that it leads to abusive practices that you somehow are supposed to be okay with. And I think that's where I just want to be like, you don't, like, we're never okay with abuse.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're never okay. It's never okay. Jesus isn't okay with it. Like, I remember I tweeted one time, like, Jesus hates divorce, but he hates abuse more.
Yeah.
And it got a lot of like mixed reviews, but I'm like, really? Like, I think that should be a basic,
Mm-hmm.
that should just be a basic understanding. He hates abuse more. So his will for you is to not be abused. That's
Yeah.
like 100%.
Yep.
So get out of there if you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's all forms of abuse as well. We want to be clear about that. Some
Mm-hmm.
people, I remember, and when again, I came into the kind of Christian world as an adult, and especially evangelical world even later. And so I mean, I was raised in a house. My mother's a doctor, so she was the primary earner, and she's also a Christian. My dad isn't. So as a result, like a lot of things have been a result of the way that my parents have modeled things, and I love them for that. But some will say, you got to listen to John Piper, James, new to Christianity, listen to John Piper. And I'm like, I don't know anything, sure. And I watched this. The first video I watched was, should a woman submit to abuse? And again, for me, that video is 1 second long. No. And then the video ends. Like, that's all. Doesn't need to be. There's no nuance here. That's the entire thing.
Yes,
No,
that's
the
right.
end. But he went, well, it depends on what's it like. And, if he hits her once, maybe that's okay. And it just blew my mind. And to the point where I'm like, I don't care about anything else this man says. And maybe he has a bunch of other stuff to say, like, and I don't think he does for what it's worth. But like that alone, I'm like, oh, you like really hate women.
Yes.
That's awful. So again,
That's
no,
a fascinating first video
I
to
know.
stumble
I
on.
know. I was like, yeah, that's it. You don't know me very well. And hey, that's okay. But
You should
again,
also look up the one about when he says that Jesus would spank a child, and because children have fat
Right.
little bottoms so they can be whooped. Yeah. Anyway.
Some people just like really like hurting people. I think.
I know.
Like I just can't think of another
Well,
explanation.
no, but what does that say about their view of God?
Yeah, well, they
Exactly.
think
And
God
this
likes
is-
hurting people.
And he
Yes.
actually says that in I think both the videos, that God, chastens us, and God chooses to hurt us, to discipline
Yeah.
us. And this view that if we suffer, it's because God is trying to teach us something, and that God deliberately brought this suffering into our lives, is what keeps so many people stuck in marriage. And I think it goes along with the belief that marriage is hard, because I think what's happened in the majority of evangelical books, like if you read any evangelical book about marriage, you'll find 5 faulty premises, okay? And they all flow from the first one, which is that men are supposed to be in authority over women. Pretty much any evangelical book you read, his needs, her needs, love and respect for women only, power of a praying wife, anything you read will have that men should be in authority over women. But then
Which,
you need a
speaking of
reason
which,
for
just really
this.
quickly, everyone who's listening to that list are books you shouldn't bother reading.
No,
Okay,
please
go
don't
ahead.
read them.
Throw
Please don't read
out
them.
those
Okay.
books. Throw them
Yeah.
out.
Throw them. Do not donate them. Do not
Do not
donate
donate
them.
them.
Rip the cover off, recycle, have a burn party, whatever. Just don't donate them. Do little paper
Yes.
crafts. I don't care.
Make-
So we have men have to be in authority over women, but there has to be a reason for men to be in authority over women. And that reason is that men and women are completely different species. And so the majority of books will focus on how men and women are completely different. That actually isn't true. There is way more overlap than there is anything else. And you can't say that men are like this and women are like this. It just doesn't work
Right.
that way.
Right.
But when you say that, then you have to say, well, if you're having trouble in marriage, it's because your expectations are wrong. You're expecting too much, right? You can't expect your spouse to meet a need that only God can meet. And so the reason you're disappointed in marriage is because you expected something. And so a lot of books are about how you shouldn't expect. And then when that doesn't work, they say, well, marriage is hard. Don't you know that God made marriage to be hard, to refine you? And then when that doesn't work, they say, but you can't divorce ever, and your reward is going to be in heaven instead. And so pretty much
Right.
all evangelical marriage books or marriage conferences or whatever, that is the teaching, right? Men are in authority, women and men are completely different. Your expectations are the problem. Marriage is hard, and just endure for a season because your reward is in heaven. And I would just like to say that if you just get rid of that first premise and just say that God meant you to be partners, everything good flows from that.
Right.
God
Right.
created us for intimacy, to be seen and still loved and accepted, and to be truly known, to have someone to go through life with that you truly know and who knows you. And that's such a blessing.
Mm.
And what we found in
Sheila,
our
this is
research for the marriage you
so
want is
funny.
that that
Oh,
is
yeah.
very possible, but it isn't
Yes.
possible when there's a power dynamic. And every time you put a power dynamic in place in marriage, those benefits just disappear and intimacy disappears.
It's so funny. Because I remember when we first got married, people kept saying like, "Oh, the first year is the hardest. Like you're gonna be you like get ready, you know." And I remember my husband and I just like the first year, we were just like, "This is amazing." Like, and then we were like, "Should we tell people this is good?" Like this is not hard. Like, should it be hard? Are we not doing it right? Like, and then at the end of the year, we're like, maybe it'll be our second year. Like we just kept waiting for it to get hard. I'm not saying there's not difficulties or we didn't have challenges but I think you've put it so succinctly. We're partners. We're in it together. And so we're meeting this together. We're meeting like and that's better. Like that is, and I think that's part of and I love Sheila, the way like the marriage you want, like it's good. Like I want to almost spread the news, like being a teenager who's like writing lists to protect myself from like this horrible potential oppression that might happen to me that is marriage, to being someone who's married and having like it be an enrichment to my life and a better way to live. Like I want to sort of go like, guys, it could be good. So even this idea of this framework of like, it's going to be bad. You're going to have to manage your expectations. Like, it's just like, wow, what kind of a nonsense is that we're preaching and teaching? And
Yeah. Yeah. And
let's
again,
stop it. It's a principality, guys. It's the devil.
it is. And it all
Yeah,
flows back to that main issue that men are in authority and that men matter more than women. And that is the one thing that so much of the church can't let go of because it's not about Jesus. It's not about intimacy and love and service. It really is
empowerment
about
and
power.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
To say as an expert on marriage, I think it's rad as well. Again, if the third, I mean, yeah, maybe it'll get rough. I don't know. I'm what 3.5 months in now. Apparently, this is the hard time. I don't know. Things feel great because Emily's amazing, and yeah, this book, The Marriage You Want, The Marriage I Want, and Continue to Want. It's so funny. I just look at these things and find them kind of hilarious as a sort of semi outsider. That well, the man just makes the decisions. I'm like, but like about what? Like, I mean, that doesn't
Exactly.
make any sense. And as we've acknowledged, well, actually, a lot of the time, the women, of course, because of course, it makes sense for people to make sense and make decisions over the things that they know about. That's just like easier. That's the thing as well. I'm like, honestly, I think I'm
Yeah,
just
it's really
fundamentally like,
irrational.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm just a kind of path of least resistance guy. So, like, why would I make a decision about something I know nothing about? That sounds exhausting.
Yes, it is irrational. But Sheila, you get a fair bit of pushback. What have been your surprises? And also, like, did your marriage shift when you discovered these sort of things, or did you always sort of have this way?
Rough first few years, just because we both really came out of a lot of the evangelical mindset, but we
Yeah,
overcame that a long time ago, and
yeah,
we've had a good marriage. I think what's really helped in the last few years is Keith's actually come on board. He's a pediatrician, but he's taken early retirement to a certain extent. He works very part time so that he can do a lot with me, and that's been wonderful. So it's
that's
been a lot of
great.
fun
Co-author,
to work with him.
And
of
also,
this.
Yes,
is he
yeah.
also like, is he all, so did he have a switch on where he saw it and was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah, but it was probably when we were 24 or something. Like, it was a
okay, so it was a
long
lot. So
time
he's
ago.
been okay.
Yeah.
So even when you entered this work, like in the early days in evangelical spaces and you're doing marriage stuff, you were both genuinely surprised that this was such a big deal.
We were. Yeah,
Yeah,
we were surprised at how much people bought into this because it was never our experience. Like,
right.
you hear about how men need respect, women need love, and it's like, well, that's never been our experience. Like, all these things that they tell you
Yeah,
are people's universal experiences. We never fit those
right.
molds. And it's like, well, I
Yeah, it
guess
turns
we're
out
just
not all men are insecure.
yeah,
Well, just like
exactly.
It's
just a
weird.
Not
monolith.
all men can't express their feelings, right? Like,
Right,
not yeah,
right.
it's crazy. And my husband likes to talk more than I do, so there you go. But I think what has surprised me the most, and which has really been the most challenging for my faith, is that I thought that once we had the data that a particular teaching was harmful,
Hmm.
that the authors and the organizations that had peddled it would care.
So Beth
Right.
Allison Barr says the exact same thing. Like, she
Mhm.
did her research on the making of biblical womanhood and was like, hey, did you know all the stuff was kind of made up and actually women have been active in the church and leading and all this stuff? Like, hey, I solved it, guys. Like, don't worry. Like, we were wrong. And this is why we, and then, yeah, I remember talking to her and she's just like, it blew my mind that when I presented all this data, it changed nothing for these people. So it doesn't surprise me you're in the exact same space. Sorry to interrupt.
Well,
I'm
Yeah.
because also
personal.
their interests are sales more than truth, right?
Yeah. And some of
Yeah.
them had been, some of the authors that we critiqued, like Shanti Feldon, for instance, had been a friend. Like I had done work with her.
Okay.
Gary Thomas, like there were people that I was actually quite close to.
Oh, well.
Mm.
And I thought of anyone they would care.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
they didn't. They just doubled down. And that was hard because you think, how is it that these people who know the Bible so well, or these megachurch pastors that quote the Bible constantly and write these huge, how is it that the people who supposedly spend their life in Scripture don't care? And then you realize that's actually been the story of history, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Jesus works on the margins. I think Jesus has always worked on the margins. Like even in ancient Israel, it was the teachers of the law who weren't getting it, but all the people on the margins were.
Yeah.
And so often
Well,
as a
and also
church,
like this toxic teaching, sometimes it's helpful for me to go like, who does it benefit? And then who it benefits, of course, aren't going to be the people that change it.
hmm hmm
Right. And so, like, if there's more pastors in America named John than female pastors put together,
are
it's
there
going to,
really?
yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time for churches to begin to
hmm
say this is a toxic theology because this
hmm
theology is working for somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But I mean, the encouraging thing, um, is that a lot of our books, all of our books are really spreading like wildfire kind of in the underground. The Gospel Coalition in Australia actually put a review up of The Great Sex Rescue because so many of their women were reading it and they just felt pastors should know what
They're
it
like, we
said.
better.
And it was
Right. That's
actually a decent review.
hilarious.
It was
Was
it was
it?
it was pretty
Really?
Good.
funny. I mean, obviously he disagreed with my theology, et cetera, but he said we were making points that they should be listening to. So I thought I
It's like also,
appreciated
Wow.
that.
but I love that too. It's like I can't disagree with their methodology, but
Yes.
obviously they're wrong. Like,
Yes,
okay,
basically yes. But I appreciated that,
yeah.
and that is I think one of the benefits of having sex as the first book is that everybody wants better sex, right? So it's like even
Right.
if you're complementarian, you'll read it.
Right.
And then we've gotten more into just marriage in general now. And I'm excited because so many pastors write to me and say, I don't have a marriage book I can recommend. Like there are no Christian marriage books
Right.
that I can use for premarital counseling. What do I do?
Yes.
And I've told them to go use Gottman. But now we have an answer because we put out The Marriage
Good.
You Want, and it's got a study guide with premarital questions and everything too, so that hopefully this can replace the toxic stuff. We
Yeah.
don't
So
need to
everybody listen
keep
to this and
reading
spread this.
toxic
So
stuff.
if you're listening to this podcast and you really want to help, send this book to the pastor, to the team, whoever does at your church, who does like, and say, we highly recommend this as a pre-marriage counseling book or a book that we recommend for marriages that we want. It's well researched, it's Christian, based and all that stuff. So I think we have to actually start giving answers and solutions because a lot of that toxic, theology there's a plethora of books that you can get that people have on hand. So it's also just like a practical reality of like, oh, here, take this. I read this, or like, and you haven't really thought through it critically, and or understood the toxicity that's at work in those places. So,
Mhm.
let's just outpace it, so
Mm.
everyone who's listening to this, please recommend The Marriage You Want as a book for people that want better
Yeah.
marriages.
And the charts are super fun. The charts are so
There
fun.
is so much data in this thing. I think this is the thing. It's like, well, women are emotional and men are logical. I'm like, this is the most charts of any book that I've ever like. All the charts on this bad boy.
Great. Let's have a look.
Pages of
And
charts, people.
then, Sheila, you also have a podcast. Tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that and what people can expect on that.
Yeah, so we have the Bare Marriage podcast every Thursday where we just talk about healthy. How do you get healthy? What's
Mhm.
evidence-based? We do a lot of research, not just our own, but we highlight research that's just been published, and we just try to shed light on what Jesus actually wants. What does fullness and abundance look like? Instead of just, hey, I'm going to suffer for Jesus' sake in this terrible relationship for the rest of my life.
I really feel like you're doing I love that your daughter's involved. I think you're doing such a great service to a generation. So I think that's part of and some of the alarming research that people are going, oh no, like women aren't getting married and aren't having children. And, and you're just sort of going, gee, I wonder why, and I feel like I honestly want to say like to people who are genuinely concerned about that demographic for the future to say maybe this could be helped by healthy evidence-based, practically minded partnering relationships that actually lead to flourishing instead of slavery. I don't know. I
There's a
think that
lot of
might be a
teenage
solution.
Danielles out there with those lists of like,
Yes.
I'm not going to be with someone that mistreats me or abuses me, or again, weaponizes scripture or
I do
valorizes
tell women to
suffering.
make a
honestly,
list.
though,
I do tell women who aren't married yet to make a non-negotiable list beforehand because I think I learned it from Catherine Booth, by the way. She had a list. And on her list was she would not marry a man who thought women were inferior to men. And at that time, that was literally the belief, the scientific belief was that women's brains were inferior to male brains. And she's like, I will not marry someone. So William Booth literally changed his mind to marry Catherine Booth. And that would have been a very different relationship had she not had the non-negotiables before she entered into a relationship. So
No,
I feel like
I
it's a good
completely agree
practice.
with that. I think we
Yeah.
do need those non-negotiables. And you please listen to me, people. But every day, I swear, I read at least 30 direct messages from
Yeah.
women who are in awful marriages.
Yeah.
And who are just in
Trapped.
desperate straits. And
Yes.
it is so much better to be single and alone and have a
Yes.
thriving community outside of marriage
Flourishing
than
life.
to be
Yes.
in a marriage like that. But I also just
Yes.
want to say, we're joking about how women are saying no to marriage, but it's fundamentally sad and pathetic that women are even in that situation
Yes.
where we
Yes.
have so bred entitlement into Christian men, especially, that the idea of finding a Christian man who
Yeah.
loves Jesus, but who also respects you is so rare today and
Yeah.
is a difficult thing.
Yes.
I mean,
It's devastating.
what an
Yes.
indictment on the church.
Yes. 100%. Let's change it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's why I think your work is so key and also so strategic. Like, I really do believe that getting this good news out is absolutely strategic to inviting people to a flourishing world. And then the dynamics, I mean, it just goes on, right? Once you pinpoint, oh, hey, if we change this one thing, by the way, just to remind everybody, men are not in charge. If you just change that one thing, the rippling effects that come from this idea of co-labor and partnership and mutuality and flourishing instead of hierarchy and control and authoritative leading could literally not just change your marriage, it can change your sex life, it can change your children, it can change the world. It can literally change how you work in community. I mean, so we just want to name the principality of patriarchy, which is a male-centered, authoritative headship sort of concept of life. It's a demonic principality that needs to be overthrown by the goodness of God, which it is and will be. And I thank you, Sheila, for all the work you're doing to do that. Let's burn it all down.
Gladly.
Yes, and liberate everybody, men included. Like, that's part of the rescue, the great sex rescue is to liberate all of us.
Yeah, and
our
I do want to
selves.
reiterate that too, because that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle. But, James, you were saying that would be exhausting to have to make all the decisions. The weight that we put on so many men and men who truly want to follow Jesus, and who thinks that following Jesus means that I am responsible for everybody in my family. So if my kids go off the rails, it's because I didn't do my job as their authority. Like, that's such a tremendous weight to put on men. And then to also tell men that you are incapable of not lusting, right? That you were created to lust, and tell them from the time they're 12 and 13 that if you see a pair of boobs and you notice that you are therefore lusting. So we don't even tell them what lust really is. And then they think God has put me on earth and has commanded me not to lust, but it's absolutely impossible not to do that. And so instead I'm going to put all of it on women, saying you need to cover up. You need to give me sex on demand so that I can withstand all of this. Like, that's totally debilitating for so many men too. And I'm not trying to excuse them, because I totally understand the issues with the objectification that so many men have had. But I do feel sorry for the 12, 13, 14-year-old boys who are in the middle of
Yes.
that.
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, we had on recently a guest, Melinda Tankard-Reist, who has been taking on the pornography industry and the reality of, and literally it was one of the most sobering interviews I've done in a long time. And then you couple that with like a message that is like from the church, and then this like aggressive principality of like, captivity from the porn industry. And you just think like, wow, the two of those, like, I mean, you're just caught in a vice that is just
Yeah.
meant to destroy you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky. Yeah. Thank you for what you're doing. Any last words of encouragement or things people should check out or?
Yeah, so find me at baremarriage.com. I have a lot of fun on social media. I do these little fixed it for yous on Instagram, which are super fun.
It's worth following Sheila for those alone. Like,
Yeah.
lots of great stuff, but I mean, also just the most depressing part of my day, but quite amusing.
Yeah, it is fun. You're putting the fun in the like, get back into the fundamental. That's right. Yeah.
But no, I would just say that if you are starting to wonder if what you've been taught is true, lean into that.
Mm.
Doubt is not a bad thing.
Curiosity.
And deconstruction is not a bad thing. It can be a very holy thing, even if it is you feel like the ground's been taken out from under you. But push through, because Jesus is on the other side.
It's a false floor. Like, that's the thing. It feels like the ground's going away, but that's not the real ground. Like,
That's
our
right.
foundation, our rock is Jesus always. And so if you're deconstructing that piece away, that's okay. I promise you, as you say, Sheila, Jesus is on the other side.
Yeah. Sink into love, huh? It's great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Keep it up. Let's all live the marriage we want.
Mm.